It's Lifeline with Craig Roberts. He's the host of Northern California's longest-running conservative talk show. He's a man with a message, a conservative with compassion. He's Lifeline's own Craig Roberts.
Good afternoon, Northern California. Welcome. Just about 5 minutes after the hour of 5 p.m. as we welcome you to another edition of Lifeline. Keeping you company Monday through Friday at this time, as we typically do, addressing issues that impact your life, your world, and your Christian walk. Corporate executive, entrepreneur, man who helped introduce the fax machine to North America, which revolutionized communications, helped put Western Union out of the telegram business, and whose staying power, even with the advent of the internet, remains today. Family man, innovator, a man with a mission, one that took him all the way to the beaches of Normandy, site of the D-Day invasion, the beginning of the end of World War II. And like the great Frank Sinatra song, he did it Walter's way. Walter Scherr joins us on the program today. Walter, a delight to have you with us.
It's my honor to be with you and your audience.
Your life has been one that I guess in many respects we could call you sort of a Renaissance man. You've been an entrepreneur, a family man. You've been involved in everything from high technology to big business to Wall Street to Hollywood and just about everything in between. Can you ever imagine looking back on your life after all of these years, Walter, that the little boy from Queens, New York would end up having such an amazing life story?
It's God very good to me, and the one virtue I had is I was born in America. Only in America could this happen. I've visited 40 countries in the world, my friend, and it's only one country that provides this opportunity. And I was 17 years old, you know. I was listening to the football game in the New York Giants when Pearl Harbor was bombed. And I really wasn't a very good student, so I didn't even know where Pearl Harbor was. But I soon learned that I wanted to join the Army and join the forces. So I went down to Whitehall Street when I was 17. My mother and father made me graduate from high school first. I went down to Whitehall Street to join the Army when I was 18. And lo and behold, instead of thinking about fighting the Japanese and the Nazis, they said to me, "Young man, you're not going anyplace. You have active tuberculosis, and you're going into a sanitarium." So I spent 6 years in a sanitarium during the war years, from 18 years old to 24 years old. And that was quite an experience, and I tried to describe it in the book. I heard nightly the death rattle. I heard a lot of other things. We didn't have any doctors. We didn't have any nurses. We only had orderlies, because doctors and nurses are taking care of our boys. So I've devoted this book to the caretakers of this world, the people that devote their lives to taking care of other people.
You know, the amazing thing about that story is that it might perhaps be said that had you not gone down to enlist, had World War II not broken out, perhaps your diagnosis of tuberculosis might not have been discovered until it was too late.
Oh, that's absolutely true. Yes, that's absolutely true. And now I'm 93 years of age. I'm happy to say that I started a book at 90. We won a couple of awards, both international awards, and so that was very fulfilling to me. But my life wasn't truly fulfilled, because in the book I looked for a gentleman that went down to the Army at about the same time I did to enlist, and I found a gentleman there named Private Bowen, Francis Bowen. So I wrote this story about how I felt about going to Normandy to pay my respects to him and the other people who died.
Let's talk about that journey, because I'm imagining you, like many young men during that time, at the outset of World War II with the announcement of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, even though up until that point the flames of war had been raging in Europe since 1939. America, on the heels of the experience of the First World War, largely stayed out. The slogan in those days was America First. And yet, at the outbreak of war with the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor and what happened in the Philippine Islands and elsewhere throughout the Pacific, many young men did what you did. They ran down to the local recruitment office and they enlisted and immediately got trained and then sent off to active duty either in the European or in the Pacific theater. You had to sit that time out because of your tuberculosis diagnosis. Did that have an impact? Did that frustrate you, Walter, that you couldn't take an active role in World War II?
It did. It haunted me all my life. The circle of life for me was not completed to this year.
And you mentioned that a big part of the book, while it takes us through many of your escapades and experiences in innovation, technology, we'll talk more about as our conversation continues, but how did the name Private Francis N. Bowen come to your radar screen? I understand that aside from the fact that you both were born and grew up in Queens, New York, you didn't actually know him in life.
No, I didn't, but when I was going to write the book, I've always felt that something was missing in my life. Why did God spare me? Why did he do that? Why did he let me be 90 years of age and other men that were my age die for our country? And that always haunted me all through those 6 years, particularly in a sanitarium and even later on in life. So I decided to make a pilgrimage, so to speak, to Normandy. And I did go there, and I wrote in a book a prayer. And I visited Normandy when I was 90 years of age. It wasn't easy because sometimes I'm in a wheelchair now because I have back problems and other problems. But I visited his grave, and two things happened in Normandy that were unbelievably outstanding. One, I went with my wife, and we were along the Seine for 6 to 7 days. I have been to France many times on business, but I never visited Normandy because I wanted to make that a special place for me. And I wanted to visit it before I died. And incidentally, everybody in America should visit Normandy. They get the feel, the emotional feel of 20,000 Americans paid their life. You're talking about pay forward. You're talking about sacrifices. They gave the ultimate sacrifice in Normandy. When you look at it, you don't know how they could have possibly climbed those hills. And I wrote a poem, oh God, why not me, under those big white hills, white cliffs in Normandy. And I wanted to say that to Francis Bowen. So I went with it. I met another couple on a boat going down the Seine River to Normandy. He was a big guy, great man. I just described in the book, a man's man. That's what he called, a God-fearing man. And his name was Calvin. And he was in Vietnam War as a pilot. And he must research and development place now in Florida, and he's a big in charity. But so when we got to 5 days, we had nice weather. The next day I was coming to Normandy, and I got out at 2 o'clock in the morning, went on my knees and said, "Hey, God, do me a favor." It's a true story. Do me a favor. I want to have the weather just like the boys had it on June 6, 1944, so I could really write about it and feel about it. And lo and behold, the next morning, it's just the same weather, if not worse, than it was in 1944. It was very difficult for me to get off the boat without his help, a big, strong guy, carrying me in my wheelchair. I would have never got to his grave at Normandy. When I got to his grave at Normandy, I looked at the weather was so bad, and in the grave, there was a cross there, but you couldn't distinguish it. It was just a white cross granite, and it was hard to see what it was saying. Along comes a lady, in a blue rain gear and a white cap or hat, and she says to me, she has a little bowl, a little cup. She says, wipe this over the cross. And lo and behold, that granite comes out. It was the sand from the beach at Omaha Beach that I was at. And it brings out everything about Francis, where he died, the low he's in, he got the Purple Heart. And the mysterious thing about it is, we turned around, and where was the lady? We couldn't find her. We only had 3 buses, looked at the 3 buses, and she wasn't on either bus. So I did write, I hope, a beautiful poem, an emotional, well, I think of it more as a prayer, but for the soldiers of Normandy. And that sort of set part of my life experience that I went there. But I wanted to find out somebody that knew Francis Bowen personally. So I've been, since I wrote the book and doing the book, I was looking around, I was advertising it, put a couple ads in the paper, so even anybody know Francis Bowen, and lo and behold, I couldn't find anybody. About a month ago, I get a telephone call. I was living in Florida at the time, and it was somebody that knew Francis Bowen. I said, holy mackerel. So we had a lunch together, and we had great stories about Francis. And they were so happy I immortalized them in my book.
Yeah, it's amazing because all along the way you can see the hand of God. And I think of your experience there on the cemetery there on the bluff just above Omaha Beach. And as Walter was describing, the years of pelting rain and weather, those crosses have been there, well, imagine, since 1944. And so much of the inscriptions have been worn away because of the weather. But as Walter suggested, taking a bit of sand and pressing the sand into the indentations made the letters visible once again. And I'm reminded of the passage of Scripture that tells us, be aware lest you entertain angels unaware. Compassion and passion for caring for caretakers. You spoke of your experience as a young man prepared to enlist in the military at the onset of World War II, but held back because of a diagnosis of tuberculosis. You spent 6 years in a sanitarium recuperating from that. And, of course, all of nurses and doctors were busy caring for the injured boys coming back from the war. And so basically you had orderlies and caretakers looking after you. And that experience of caring for caretakers came kind of full circle, and an encounter that you had with Mother Teresa. Tell us about that.
Yes, I was working for Litton Industries in the 60s and went on an assignment over to India for Litton. And when I finished my assignment, the people said, what would you like to do? You finished your assignment. I spent 4 months there. And I said, my first thing, order of priority is I like to visit Mother Teresa. They said, we think you could do that for you. I have to say one thing. Of all the countries I visit, 40 countries in the world, India is the most fascinating in a way. The smells and the sounds. That when I walk down the street in India with cars and ducks and geese and everything's moving down the street. There's signs, but no red. This was 30 years ago, 40 years ago. No red lights or anything. I don't know how people learn to turn it off or what they did, but I was so emotionally involved in that walk that I took down the boulevard. When I started thinking I'm walking down 5,000 years of history. 5,000 years of history. I was feeling pretty good about myself, thinking, well, what a job I did when I'm over here. And that took me from from high on the mountain to the bottom of the mountain. So 5,000 years people have been walking down this boulevard. Oh, my God, what a small guy you really are.
My trip there was one of the most memorable in a lifetime of travel. I will never forget my first impression of Delhi, the smell of spices, an overpowering mixture that was totally foreign to me. Then the crowded streets that throbbed with the throngs of people pressing in on me, walking, running, crawling, all of them competing for space with the legions of bicycles, rickshaws, handcarts, ox carts, buses, and cars. And the animals, cats, dogs, monkeys, goats, and oxen. So many species navigating the same thoroughfares, but all headed in different directions. Traffic lights were non-existent, and the traffic signs and lines on the roads seemed to be suggestions that everyone ignored. The noise was all-encompassing and overwhelming. The sounds I heard in India were the sounds of life, the heartbeat of 5,000 years.
That was an experience I'll never forget. That the smell of everything, the crowds, people hanging out from every way, from the buses to the trolleys. So anyway, I did get to an audience with Mother Teresa, not alone, but with 35 other people, and in her office, in her place in Calcutta. And she was frail, as you know, but after she talked about her mission. But after she talked about her mission, we went up to greet her, and she took my hand, and that hand was a hand of steel, very strong. That's what struck me first. This is a frail little lady to a strong hand. And she said to me, she said, she didn't address me, but I walked right beyond it if she did. But I was just one of 35, but she did say, she said, we have to try. We have to try to help the sick and the poor and other people. God knows we have to do that. We can't always succeed, but we have to try. And as you know, for the last 13 or 14, 15 years, I've been associated with a place up in New York State called the Center for Discovery, which we have 1,500 cerebral palsy children and 850 with other diseases. And that's where my life is right now, up in Alpino Center for Discovery. And all the proceeds from the book and the audio go to Center for Discovery. It's a wonderful place, and I got to know the people that real well, caretakers, and they are Mother Teresa.
And your encounter with her really solidified in your own heart the importance of caring for the caretakers, caring for those that care for us, I guess we would say.
Yes, that's right. I really think, nothing against the Kardashians or anything, but I do think we have to elevate the caretakers. Where would we be without the caretakers? Like I'm 93 now. Where would I be without the wonderful people that are taking care of me? God bless the caretakers. God bless America. And we have to educate, I think, our younger people as to what a great country this is. I have about 16 or 17 grandchildren, and I try to educate them. And I think everybody has to, it's our duty to tell them how this country was formed, the sacrifices made, the pay forwards that were done so they can enjoy this freedom, this opportunity. No other place in the world, I guarantee you, I've been to 40 countries, no other place in the world could you ever get an opportunity as somebody like me. When I was 28 years old, I was a soda jerk. When I was 38 years old, I was sent by General MacArthur to head up Europe for Sperryman Corporation. No other place do you have those opportunities. When you're born into a class, you'll very well stay in that class.
Well, the irony, Walter, is I think that the big concern that we should have today is that there is a whole generation who really doesn't give much thought to how we got here. They just know that they enjoy the advantages of modern-day technology, communications, travel, a global economy, all of the benefits that they enjoy on a day-to-day basis that give scant thought to how did we get here. And the irony, of course, is that where we're at today, for each and every one of us, is built upon the shoulders and the graves of those that went before us. I'm struck by your experience at Normandy and at the cemetery there in finally getting a chance to visit the grave of Private Francis Bowen and to recognize that he and thousands of others gave their lives in order to set Europe free and eventually free the world of the menace of power of the Axis between Japan and Germany, and that what we enjoy, the freedoms that we have here today in America, are built on the blood-stained beaches a continent away and nearly a century ago. You think it's important for young people to really recognize and pay homage, in a sense, to the shoulders and graves upon which modern-day world is built?
Yes. I'll tell you what I'm worried about. People don't realize, I don't think, that in one generation, we could lose it. We could lose everything we have. It only takes one generation.
It's fragile, isn't it?
It is very fragile. That's what I'm trying to get across. It's very fragile. One generation. That's all.
You have taken the time to chronicle your life experiences that essentially take us from the young man born in Queens, New York, to the older man who traveled a half a world away to pay homage to a fallen soldier at Normandy. And then, of course, you talk about all of your life experiences in between. If you had to summarize all of this as you look back on your life, Walter, and for the benefit of young people that are eavesdropping on our conversation today, if you had to encapsulate or summarize all of your life's experiences, the mistakes that you've made, the failures that you have suffered, the victories that you have won, can you distill it down into one or two brief ideas, maybe three, Walter, of sort of a guidebook for living that has served you well, that you would suggest would serve young people today?
Yes, I think I think you have to have a cause to serve, something to believe in. It doesn't have to be religion, but it has to be something to believe in. And I think you have to study a little bit of history. We don't teach that too much anymore in school. And I don't think anybody ever really dies, as long as one person thinks about them and talks about them. We live forever. I have a grandma queue I used to go to every Sunday. 75, 80 years ago, and I still talk about her today. She's still living today. So if you live a good life, if you try to help other people, the rewards of helping other people are infinitesimal. The people up at Center for Discovery, the children, who suffer so greatly, including their parents, the smiles that they give you, you cannot, for any amount of money, buy that smile. Just one story. I was up there a couple of weeks ago, and they have their own little orchestra, okay? I was walking around the place, and the orchestra was playing in the indoors. About maybe 15 in the orchestra at Center for Discovery. And there was a big, tall, thin, redhead guy on the side, not in the orchestra, playing with his violin, all off tune. But the look on his face said to me, I got such a kick. He was so happy that he could be a violin. It said to me, everything I'm trying to do up there is more than worth it. And I think if you give, you'll get back. Tithing, I believe in. God will give you back much more than you ever gave. And we have to have faith in Him, faith in America. And I say to you, my friend, thank you for having me. God bless America. God bless you and your program and your listeners. And someday I hope to meet you in person.
Well, I appreciate that, Walter, and I appreciate many of the lessons that you have shared today, your life experiences. And I think for listeners, one of the key points, the takeaways of our conversation with Walter, and I do encourage you to get a copy of Walter's book, Walter's Way. It's available through the website at waltersway.org. A portion of the proceeds also do to help support the ongoing work of the Center for Discovery that Walter spoke about a couple of times during our visit today. I think the key takeaway is that we need to live our lives in such a fashion that we go about it with the idea of leaving a legacy behind. Walter spoke about the notion that if someone, even if it's just one, still remembers you, in a sense you haven't really died, and in a great sense you have left that legacy. When our time comes, and it will come for all of us, have we lived our life in such a fashion that leaves a legacy that we can say, when it's over, I made a difference? That's an important question, I think, for all of us to ponder. Walter J. Scherr, thanks so much for the time today. Again, the book, Walter's Way, available on the web at waltersway.org. That's waltersway.org.